And among the cards that he's added, I feel like the Feral Rage could come in a bit clutch versus Quest Shaman, just to maybe get you out of some burst potential here and there. But overall, I think Bankyugi's main game plan should be similar to... Oh, wow, what an opener for okasinnsuke. I think Bankyugi's main game plan should be similar to how you would play Quest Shaman versus the old Anaconda Druid, which is going for the most aggressive start possible. You want the Note Taker Bloom type of opener. If you're able to play an early Canal Slogger and just finish your quest or first stage in one turn, that's great because you're unoverloaded and can continue to curve out even with a relatively early charge call on the next turn.
Yeah, I think like even though Guidance is one of the better cards to get completing quest with, and I definitely wouldn't hate Bankyugi keeping it. I agree. I want to find Bloom. I want to find Serpent Shrine, Slogger, Feral Spirits, all these cards that just actually apply some instant pressure. And maybe if you had Note Taker alongside it, oh, hello, it might become a little bit more palatable just to double down on it. But aside from that, I would like to see more minion presence.
Oh, what an opener for okasinnsuke. He just has everything he needs. I mean, Bankyugi already knows it, right? When you see the full keep from the Kaz Druid, you're already like, yeah, this is not going to go my way, is it? Because for okasinnsuke here, he can just take Guess the Weight, probably. That's pretty nice, whether pre or post Kazaka-san. It just doesn't seem like a game where Cenarion Ward will even be necessary.
Like, I guess he's thinking, okay, this game is going fantastically well. How do I lose? If they go for a blisteringly fast start, like bloom out the Slugger, complete the quest, get the 3-3, all that nonsense, maybe Cenarion Ward is just your panic button in case you need a small percent outer. Wow.
That's a Bloom, though. Bankyugi can go Note Taker, Bloom, Guidance, and then evaluate if he has to use the second Bloom. But I mean, the fact that this is a Fireheart to fill out the hand instead of one more overload spell or minion, like Canal Slogger, that actually develops relevant board presence is a bit awkward here, but okay. Connect issues. Bankyugi waving.
Bankyugi unsure what to do. Hello, admin, is there anyone in my house right now that can come help me?
I mean... It's probably a server issue because it's not as though his camera is frozen, so the rest of his internet is working. Hopefully we can get that fixed sooner than later because that turn is definitely not set in stone. It's highly dependent on what he gets off of the Guidance, in my opinion. If we saw him discover a Feral Spirit or Serpent Shrine Portal, that could be amazing and suddenly put a timer on okasinnsuke.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even just with what had already happened before the timer hit for Bankyugi, like the fact that he went Note Taker Bloom and not Bloom Note Taker Guidance, I thought was kind of interesting in its own right, because he could have obviously sacrificed some mana gain potential to just solidify his card draw, because even though that makes the Fireheart a bit weaker because you have less mana to work with to double down on those effects, it kind of matters less that Fireheart is weak because you have so many other cards thanks to the double Guidance. But in the end, he's actually just letting rip with the Fireheart right now just to discover one card.
I think this is fine because the option he got from the Guidance, I mean, both of them are just too slow here. He's going for maximum tempo, which is what I said you kind of need to do in the matchup. Obviously not ideal that it's Fireheart committed, but we are looking at Tiny Toys Vivid Spores. Not in the order you want them, but there is potential to build your own canopic jars here.
That would be the most Bankyugi game of Hearthstone I have ever seen. But like you say, it seems unlikely that we're going to get that one to come to fruition. Weird hand, obviously, here for okasinnsuke, where you really don't want to play the Luna on this turn because you want to go Luna Overgrowth on the following turn. But I guess if you accept that you're floating a mana on this turn, you still just have a pretty nice play out of mana, right? You can go either Coin Overgrowth, Coin Vate, Wildheart Guff. Like, your hand is still functioning beautifully.
Okay, Bankyugi with a top deck of Charge Call is going for exactly what we were talking about in terms of just curving out. Cheesemonger. All right.
It's getting stinky up in here. Let's go.
I mean, that fills out Bankyugi's curve pretty nicely, even outside of the card text being very clowny indeed. It just leads him up into Vivid Spores on decent amount of targets, find a turn 5, and then Tiny Toys. It's a plan.
It is a plan.
And it kind of means that if okasinnsuke wants to commit coin and innervate, well,
right.
There are not that many zero-cost spells in the game. It doesn't have to be Shaman exclusive, so he can get things like Serpent Bloom, which wouldn't be useful, but there is a very real chance Bankyugi gets Prep or other mana gain like Innervate and Lightning Bloom, and that could mean that okasinnsuke is in a lot more trouble than he thinks he is, because Bloom into Tiny Toys the next turn, into a potential Vivid. Oh, now we're talking.
Oh, imagine. It would be so Bankyugi again to go prep Tiny Toys on turn 4 as Quest Shaman. But okasinnsuke giving him Shadow Step. Okay. You know, being able to get a duplicate effect on the Note Taker is not terrible at all.
Devouring Swarm, not too great, but Shadow Step can get some value, like you said. Gets Font of Power from the 1 cost.
Indeed.
Is it greedy of me to think that the spores can get better?
No, I mean, there's Tiny Toys in hand, right? Like, Spores can obviously get better with this hand. It's just about how much you're willing to greed it, because, like, what, Font of Power still gets you mage minions, right?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, so you could go for that and just hope to hit, I don't know, Stargazer, like one of the just low-cost mage minions, but it's probably going to be a lot less tempo overall, even if it gets more immediate attack online.
Meanwhile, for okasinnsuke, he went for the early guff with the Draw of Nature Studies. I think that pushed him away from going Overgrowth on the previous turn. Now he could spend his mana very cleanly, still get to go Overgrowth this turn and push the button. I guess he still floats 1 if he goes for ramp, but I'm pretty sure it's ramp here, overdraw.
Okay, what is that? Illidari, what, Coordinated
Strike?
Yeah, summon 3 1/1s with Rush. That's not bad. You ideally want some way to buff them, but it spends your mana proactively, which is very good for a spell in this matchup.
Oh, the cheese. Is it weird of me to think that Font of Power for a 4 or 3 drop would be better here? Because this kind of messes with his board space as well, and I was really thinking that Tiny Toys ASAP would be maybe the highest pressure type of outcome, but there are a few 5 drops that don't have any additional effect, so the 1/1s are pushing damage sooner.
Yeah, and you are expecting Kazaka-san pretty heavily, so you could always like bump in with the 1/1s first if you really wanted to get down the Tiny Toys on this turn. But either way, what are we looking at here?
Staff. I was looking at Bubba just because of this board, but fair enough, the staff lets him deal with Cheesemonger finally.
Clockwork?
Clockwork? Yeah, I think the Holy Book's too slow at this point. Unless you want you want a giant cheesemonger? He took it though.
Wow.
Vampiric Fangs. Yep. Embers.
Ooh. Yeah, I guess it probably is Embers. These minions are going to die eventually, right?
But honestly, these are not great. I think okasinnsuke needed Wand for this situation.
Right, yeah. Oh, what, you get the spells back from the cheesemonger? You got a full packet going on here?
It's probably Ancient Reflections, right? Even if you have to like copy a 1/1 coordinated strike token, at least they have Rush, and that can actually keep dealing with the board somewhat. But all in all, very lackluster Kazaka-san. It's completely reactive, but not the premium reactive spells, which means that Bankyugi just gets to push more and more damage.
Man, Bankyugi here just wants to start finding the burn spells. Like you said, like his board space is getting very, very limited, so he just needs ways to spend his mana on actually killing his opponent, which means Bloom, Serpent Shrine, Bolt, Serpent Shrine. This isn't bad, but he still needs the actual spells to go with it.
Font of Power for, like you said, Starscryer, right? That's some cycle at least. And it's such a weird hand because there's nothing he necessarily wants to copy with the Note Taker either. He could step his Sleep Breaker to get one more Wind Chill and keep the cycle going.
Oh,
Okay.
Flowcaster? Oh no, that doesn't quite work, does it? That would have been sick though.
Yeah, this Dungeoneer, pretty decent. Just anything to keep cycling. Seems okay. But now he's just praying. No wand, no wand, no wand.
Ooh, that's spicy. Vampiric Fangs plus Cenarium Ward definitely helps. But he's digging for something better. Wow.
Wow. Well, he is gonna fill up Bankyugi's hand to the point of overdraw, which is pretty funny. Okay, gets Staff. Now he can deal with both halves of the Cheesemonger and Note Taker, as well as the 2-3 and 3-2. You probably use Vampiric at some point to gain the 6.
Yeah, I mean, he could obviously go for Staff plus Ancient Reflections if he just wants a board full of poisonous, Reborn Death Rattle Killer Everything minions. But he'd have to slot in the Bloom alongside that as well. So I think I agree with you that Vampiric feels like a more efficient use of your mana.
He could Bloom and then push the button, and then all the mana is spent if he takes ramp. But I am still leaning towards Vampiric Fangs just to get the healing, right? It's starting to get scary. You can die from 12 to Burn Shaman. Granted, they have a lot of randomness in their hand right now, so you can kind of make the call that a lot of that is not going to be burn spells. Zero cost spells simply don't have any burn options.
Man, there are some really clowny plays you can go for here as Bankyugi. Like, you can go Note Taker, Amulet, step the Note Taker, play it again, Amulet, Bloom, Amulet. Maybe you can only play 2 on this turn, or do that with the Serpent Shrine instead. But like, you can push a pretty reasonable amount of damage on this turn.
Gosh, my brain hurts. Like, maximum of extra mana he can get is by copying Bloom, right? So he'll go to 5,
True.
then
Good
he has 9 mana to work with. And with that 9 mana, you can step Note Taker, play 2 Amulets or 2 Serpent Shrines, and then whichever one you have remaining as the 3rd spell, which is a maximum of 11 damage, if I'm counting it correctly.
Agreed. So 13
I don't think
altogether.
I don't think there's any way to get more damage in this turn all at once. You can get more damage over 2 turns by copying Serpent Shrine or the Amulet with both copies of Note Taker you get, including the staff one, but the stepped one, but you cannot play all of it together. So I kind of like the Bloom, copy Bloom play better. Time is running out though.
Yeah, he's got to go.
I saw.
Oh my god, that's such a meme.
It is, truly. Does he end up just floating 3 here? Okay, it's just the Moon Touch. Did he get the attack phase?
Okay, good enough, good enough.
Good enough. That's Note Taker, I guess. Yeah. All right. Nothing particularly good left to copy in the hand, but he can top deck even Primordial Study, something like that, or Charge Call. I really don't know.
Oh man, a board full of eyesores? That would get so big. Are you kidding me?
That's BG level scaling.
Oh!
Please do it. Please do it.
Come on, Okashinsuke, please. Oh, that would be so sick.
I am tunneled on it now. There is no choice but to go for that. Grand Totem Eyesore. We gotta highlight it. And so if you have 6 eyesores on board, I mean, all of them will end up as 5/5s, right?
Yeah.
He only has 5 board spaces right now, unfortunately. He can still do it. Bloom it. Bloom it.
Come on, please.
Bloom it.
Oh.
Oh, so sad.
Clearly, he just
Sorry.
missed the lines. If he'd seen it, he would have instantly done.
Sorry, they would have been 6/6s again because they start as 1/1s, right? With the
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, yeah. And they buffed themselves, yeah, so.
Anyway, reining ourselves back into reality, Bankyugi still has a big problem on his hands in that his like board presence has mostly evaporated now. Steward of Scrolls is so expensive here. Thalnos is cycle, but it's all a little bit slow. He is just dying to the 8-5 and the 3-9. Generated so much stuff, but it does a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it wouldn't, in this instance, I don't think have made a difference if he'd saved a good target for the Note Taker. But the problem with his line is he left himself with 0 mana Note Taker in hand and effectively nothing to bother copying, right? Because he used both the Serpentine Portal and the Moontouched Amulet, which are the 2 cards you actually care about copying with the Note Taker. So he was very much leaving himself reliant on getting a good draw off the top here.
You could technically still go here to copy the Bloom with Note Taker and play Tiny Toys.
Sure. Yeah.
But I don't know if it's particularly good. I think this line is probably better just to remove the damage from the board. He expends the Coordinated Strike. Just
okay.
Not much going on here. All right.
Come on.
10-10 Eyesore.
10,
and then you Ancient
and
Reflection.
Baby Eyesores.
Please do it, Okashinsuke! Yes! Yes! He's hovering on it. So the 10, if you have 6 Eyesores and one of them is a 10-10, man, this feels like a math problem.
Yeah.
It's gonna end up as a 15-15?
If one eyesore leaves the station at 10:15, one eyesore leaves it at 3:15.
How much do your eyes hurt at the end of it?
Yeah. Almost as much as my brain.
Yes! He's almost there. He's about to copy it. Here we go! Oh, yeah!
Oh, man.
This is amazing! They're scaling like PG minions!
Eat your heart out, Lobby Legends. We got it all right here.
Okay, any 5 drops that can help with this? Anything?
Nothing. Nothing beats the eyesore.
Nothing. You are very correct.
Sorry to laugh at your pain, Bankyugi, but I mean, I feel like he could at least somewhat see the comedic side of that angle. That was just absolutely clowny at the end. Even if Okashinsuke can't, I think his camera might have frozen there at the end. But if not, that is the saddest eyesore playing person I have ever seen in my life.
True. I mean, how can you not be giggling like a child after that? It is certainly the most ridiculous game we've cast of the season. Granted, it's only the first weekend, but somehow I'm not surprised that Bankyugi was involved in one way or another. He just loves to bring the decks with created by in them. And somehow, it was the cheesemonger that led to all this nonsense, more so than the Kazakusan.
It was indeed, yeah. Love to see Cheesemonger getting its time in the sun. But for Okashinsuke, now 1 game up to 0. The Druid getting a win. It often feels like these matchups are very dependent on the Druid. But I have to say, obviously it would have been really bad for Okashinsuke if he had got the loss there, letting the Shaman through. Because I think that the Druid isn't necessarily the part that wanted to be targeted here so much, sorry. As the Quest Shaman. On the other side, Okashinsuke still just has, I think, a pretty reasonable shot of going the full distance against it here. The Priest, I like that matchup very much against the Quest Shaman. It struggles to deal with these very, very large minions. And same story with the Demon Hunter. A Magtheridon is very tough to clear. Freezing it is really your best chance for a couple of turns with the Sleep Breakers. And just moving towards that own win condition with the Deadeye and the expendable performers is, I think, a real strong likelihood in that matchup where the Shaman really doesn't have the ability to put on enough pressure.
Yeah, we saw there, Bankyugi had a lot of time in the mid game and a bunch of generated cards, but they just weren't enough cycle. He never ran up into his multicasters, which really could have gotten him to the real meat of his deck. The second charge call, for example, couldn't progress the quest even to the point of getting the 3/3 taunt. It felt like his hand was clogged up with a little bit too much cheese. But as for what you said about the Shaman versus Priest matchup, yes, on paper, Shaman should struggle to deal with the big Nazmani boards, but just like the Priest, Shaman is actually capable of generating what they need. at the dire moments if they can get a Hex, like what was stuck in Bankyugi's hand for quite some time, or devolving missiles, even Revolve to a certain extent. It's not unanswerable, the boards that Priest can put together. And I'd argue that after the Priest has exhausted most of their resources, it's much more difficult for them to generate an alternate win condition than it is for the Shaman to generate an answer for these boards.
Very true. We have seen that in all instances of this Miracle Priest, it's a very, a brittle deck. It's a real glass cannon where you can have these ridiculously high power spikes, like turn 3 or 4. Was it Gabby tweeted out the other day, like a absurd start he got in the off-stream Grandmasters game where like turn 4 he had an unbeatably large board already. But you can just not draw any of your minions. You can just not draw any of the spells that discount alongside your minions. Like it can go very much 2 minions or not enough minions at any point in the game. But I think in terms of consistency, okasinnsuke does have himself the most cautious of lists, the safest of lists here, with only the 3 minions in the form of the Nazmanis and the 1 Malagos. And then he's got 3 tutor cards as well, right, with the double insight and the horn in order to guarantee himself those minions. So for the most part, it's really more about finding the cheap spells and the palm readings, most importantly of all, more so than even finding the minions, which is quite likely.
Right. I wonder if by the end of this weekend we'll have an answer across all the regions of GM if the golden ratio of tutor cards to minions is actually 1:1 or is it 2:3? Right. I don't really know. Maybe it's even something different here because some people out there still like running Zyrella, but I think we already know for APAC it just doesn't quite make sense for this week, given that most people had the read that there wouldn't be much aggro outside of Shaxi, I suppose. But for facing up against Quest Shaman in particular, I think Zyrella is sleeper still pretty good because sometimes Quest Shaman gets the starts that are very minion heavy. Just a single Feral Spirit can be a bit problematic if you haven't put together your own Nazmani combo.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to see how this one shakes out again, as it is going to be, as we saw, the Shaman against the Priest. For Bankyugi, sorry, on the other side, having talked more about the Priest, for the Shaman, do you expect the mulligan to be for the same kinds of things you'd usually be looking for in the form of, blooms, overload cards, guidance, I suppose, to progress the quest a bit quicker, setting up for a multicaster? Or do you have to play the more defensive route and double down on getting wind chills and sleep breakers in order, and I suppose the discover effects to find, as you said, hexes and devolving missiles to just play on the back foot right from the get-go?
And it's really close. My instinct is to say is you kind of go with the flow of what your hand tells you. If you get a good synergy of like Note Taker Bloom, you can just go for a big like early tempo push. If your hand gives you Sleep Breaker, that's still just a good play on curve and it keeps you cycling, and maybe that incentivizes you to go for maybe a bit more of a value type slant, because I can also see definitely the merits to trying to double guidance instead of Bloom, for example, for more shots at Devolving Missile, more shots at Hex, Revolve, etc. It all just depends on what type of draw you get as Quest Shaman, because the deck can veer in so many different directions. The one thing that Bankyugi can be aware of for sure, though, is that he at least has time in the early game to do whatever he likes, because it's very unlikely that okasinnsuke is just gonna tempo out a Nazmani in this matchup. It's a bit too risky against a deck that has Lightning Bolts and Serpentine Portals. Bankyugi can probably wait until he sees a palm reading or an insight played corrupted, and will know that by the next turn he has to have accrued enough resources to deal with a big Nazmani.
Well, right out the gate, Horn of Rathion for okasinnsuke is not ideal because you'd rather have the insight, of course, but I think you're holding on to it just to guarantee yourself those Nazmanis as consistently as possible. On the other side, though, for Bankyugi, in terms of focusing on your own game plan, are you a believer in keeping primordial studies? Like, I remember this was coming a topic of discussion just towards the tail end of Quest Shaman being popular, with multicasters in there as well. You can argue for keeping an arcane spell in your opening hand, but Bankyugi just with the full mull instead.
Right. I think in Burn Shaman, I would definitely keep it. But with Quest Shaman, I think you're looking to do much more specific things in the early game that actually progress your quest. So, especially given the fact that you are keeping already one card in the quest itself, I'd rather free up that that hand slot for Sleep Breaker like this that can help you cycle, Bloom, Note Taker, even Guidance, or Feral Spirits that can start to get you towards quest stage 1 while also generating resources.
What started off as an acceptable hand, leaning towards slightly underwhelming for Okashinsuke, has turned into an absolutely gorgeous hand, though, here with palm readings, Nazmani. If he can win the flip on this Insight and hit the second Nazmani for 1 mana, which is, I think, what you'd be looking for more so here, he can start popping off really, really soon.
Interesting though, Power Word Fortitude also is a very deceptive card in that when you are full of resources, and at the best of times, it's amazing because it busts your minion and it even cheapens further the rest of your spells because usually it's going to cost 0 and the Nazmani effect is great. But when you don't have that many spells in hand, it suddenly becomes a mana sink instead, where you kind of think, okay, I want to go Nazmani and immediately copy the Nazmani so that you can keep getting more and more discounts. But every spell you play that isn't Fortitude risks you sinking mana into the Fortitude. I'm curious to see how Okashinsuke will navigate that, but I think the choice on this first Discover is very, very obvious indeed. Just the Condemn to make sure he can deal with at least some of this board.
Yeah, I was wondering if you take Soul Mirror and like you treat that as your mana sink, like that's what you're trying to discount instead of a dragon, or like Malagos or off the Draconic Studies. But I think I agree in the end. Like, even though 2 damage is not likely to clear everything off, it should hopefully be doing enough here. As Okashinsuke, wishing for the Nazmani, hits it for 1 mana as well, instantly discounts it too, which means whatever dragon he gets here is almost certainly going to end up playable. This is a disgusting start here with an Insight offered as well, which could lead him to get Malagos next turn too.
True. I think definitely the mana sink that Okashinsuke was gearing up for was the Draconic Studies, but now it gets a bit weird, right? Because he has the Discover Dragon and the Malagos, so it's very unlikely that he gets to play any more minions here. So he is just hoping that this 5/10 and 2/5 are enough to stick, which is honestly not a highly viable proposition given that Bankyugi still has 10 points of damage on board. Bankyugi also deliberately did not attack at all last turn to deny Gift of the Naru, which I guess is still decent here. He just wanted the board to deal with a potential board on the other side rather than push damage. Let's loose with the Fireheart. Getting Lightning Bolt as the first option is amazing, and he has Overdraft at the end of this to make sure he still has mana to work with next turn.
Yeah, it's gorgeous, isn't it? Bloom to deal with the first layer of quests, get that overloaded as efficiently as possible. These ones suck, however, much more so than the other ones. I guess you still just go for the slightly less efficient Tidal Surge than Lightning Bolt because it still allows you to clear the board, right? Even if it's fairly expensive.
It's expensive though, especially since Bankyugi knows there's a big dragon hitting him next turn, whether it's from the Studies or from the Malagos, but he picks up a Revolve. This is one of those key spells we were talking about that can get you so much additional percentage in the matchup, because now Okashinsuke is switching to game plan phase 2 of Miracle Priest because he's played both natural Nazmanis, right? Nothing was copied using Divine Luminance or Psyche Split. So the Malagos and the Skeletal Dragon and whatever comes off of his last Studies are pretty much the minions he will have to work with for this game. And he's going Psyche Split now, the highest tempo play. I much prefer this to going for compared to going for Malagos because it's just more difficult for Bankyugi to remove, in theory.
Oh, just look at these stats. He has so many ways to spend his mana for the rest of the game. Like, obviously Nazmanis would be nice, but they really just don't matter. It had to be really bad minions there, I think, for there to be much of a chance at all for Bankyugi. And he does get that, admittedly. These are very underwhelming 7-drops. True.
They're still out of range of Perpetual Flame, which is a big deal. But Yeah, Bankyugi just doesn't have that much mana to work with. Meanwhile, Okashinsuke can draw to a full hand of spells if he likes, or just continue higher pressure with the Skystalker or Amalgam plus Palm Reading. So many ways to go about it, but I think I would favor Okashinsuke going for Malagos.
That is so close, but not quite there. I guess saving that for next turn with the Novice Zapper is probably where your head should be at. So I like that he's saving it here instead of going for Zapper plus Bolt, which is maybe where his head was at otherwise.
Agreed. Whoa!
Wow, okay, interesting.
Probably the one card that would put me off just slamming Mali down here.
Yeah, I agree. It's so hard to clear, especially after you've just seen a discovered option off of the Revolve.
The key thing to note for Okashinsuke is that his only discounts left in the game are from Palm Reading because he's played both Nazmanis. So he has to be aware that at the point he gets Mount plus Bless, which is usually the reach that Priest needs to deal a lethal, he will have to play it naturally for either 9 mana or still on turn 9, right? Because he has to take at the minimum turn 8 to discount them with Palm Reading.
Like he missed on the other Fortitude, which is a little bit annoying. Does give, I don't know, Bankyugi maybe some hope of being able to clear this off. It would be, what, Zapper, Bolt, the Malagos trade-in. He needs another spell damage, I think, to be able to get there, really.
Yeah, so I think he's just not going to bother, which I completely respect. Maybe you can find some more freeze, guidance into something. I admittedly don't know what size the charged call is right now. But
it's at like 6?
If it's not 10, it's not doing enough here. He needs rabbits.
Yeah.
I guess he could attempt the partial clear with the Dapper Perpetual Flame, trade in the 5/5 first. Oh, it's so bad.
Yeah, I think you just need to save that if you're going to have any chance. I'm just trying to figure out what he has available next turn when you factor in the Diligent Note Taker as well. Those are just a load of rubbish. I guess Ogre is the biggest one. Or you can take the Taunt. Yeah, sure. Save yourself some health.
So,
right, let's get buffing.
Is there any lethal out here? The Malagos can gain 6 health from Devourer. It can get Psyche splitted. I don't think it's enough.
Yeah, I don't see it.
There's also the silence effect. So, wait. I think he might have been 1 mana off of lethal. In any case, this is still extremely strong.
Yeah, maybe actually with the palm readings for a discount too. You might be right.
Takes Alex for even more reach, but just this board alone is going to be enough to get the job done because Bankyugi simply does not have the answers. He can still go digging with Multicaster for another guidance potentially. Looks like he's starting with Perpetual Flame instead. Has he spotted a clear?
Okay. Got the best possible outcome.
I have to play 3 bolts on this? 2 bolts and an overdraft? And then you still leave a 4/7?
Is there mana to go for that?
There is not.
Yeah. Because he won't overload any locked mana crystals from the previous turn, so yeah, I don't think he can get through that.
He can, sorry, he can bolt overdraft. Is that enough? Plus the trade?
Overloaded for 3, 4, 5, for 6. Yeah, I think that does just about get there.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, it's just a little bit short of not having to trade the 3/4. Always awkward, but Bankyugi simply had to. That was too much health. Bless was too scary.
All right, how much damage is this though? My goodness, so it's like +3, so that goes up to 13. You can give an additional +2 with the psych split, 15, 17. It's not quite there, I don't think.
Yeah, not without enough discounts. Probably just take Condemn. I mean, you could go Alec Mount. That's also very strong. Because this shard will go down to 0 mana after the palm reading. He can use that to silence the spell damage and the taunt and then just push the huge minion face again. Like, Bankyugi has consistently shown that he's been struggling to deal with the huge minions. And in fact, Devour plus Condemn was actually a clear, though.
True. I mean, I wonder if that's even better. Like, just going like condemn shard here gives you so much health, so much attack for the following turn. Oh, sorry.
Trades.
Yeah. Devour shard. He does end up trading rather than playing the shard, which is pretty surprising. I guess it still sets up lethal from his perspective, and it means that no taunts from like feral spirits can come down.
Yeah, maybe also respecting charged call outs if Bankyugi generates another one.
Okay, well, that is Brukan in hand now. So Bankyugi somehow has bought himself enough time to survive up until here. So if he can get himself, revolved or devolving missiles here, maybe this is salvageable?
Torrent is not enough. Well, it's not enough to clear. It does make the Bless reach a lot lower.
It does.
Oh, wait, sorry, it is.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I forgot. Yeah, the double from Brukan. So how much reach is there for okasinnsuke now? Fortitude is huge. Plus 5. 10.
Thrive into a heal?
Alright, Thrive into Gift. I do agree the turn should start with Thrive. And then he can evaluate from there what to do. That's not the right heal.
Oh, it just does heroes, yeah, not minions, my bad. Yeah,
just
like
Luminance, maybe? Because... Okay, true, you do have the mana to go double Psyche Split.
Yeah.
And just not having the lethal here is so painful for okasinnsuke because Brukan's just online now and there's a bunch of guidance cards in hand. Things can truly start to get out of control.
Like, actually kind of started to slip away here somehow. I don't really believe it myself, but it seems to be.
Either Psyche Split into Bless is only 14 damage. Not quite enough. Gonna Bless and then Psyche Split.
Yeah, sure. This is really scary. Like, this still needs a miracle for Bankyugi to be able to pull himself out of with this much attack on board, this much health on board as well. But Brukan has done stranger things in its time. So we are looking at now what? Storm Strike, Serpent Shrine still isn't going to be enough. He needs to get some more Discover.
Charge Call into Rabbit is the way.
Right. Or Guidance?
Guidance.
Devolving for Revolve? Yeah. I don't know, something.
I don't think he can have the hubris to hide behind the wolves and say that's enough. There's still Shard of the Naru, so it has to be a Guidance out. Need Guidance into Bloom, ideally, but I mean, it's 4 additional cards. Yeah. That, to me, seems more likely to get him out of this situation than a bunch of 2/3s. Bankyugi agrees. What's in the box? Not those. Wah wah.
Wind Fury? No, doesn't do it. Oh, he was so close. I was pulling for him to come out of that one because I think okasinnsuke maybe was playing a little bit too cautious at the end, gave him a little bit too much time to pull it back. As, man, okasinnsuke was feeling the pressure there. A sigh of relief as he takes game 2. That was much closer than I think we expected it to be. But congratulations to him in the end. The priest doing its job, taking down the shaman.
Yeah. I mean, that did get very, very close in the end. I mean, okasinnsuke, you and I were a little bit unsure of the turn that he didn't go face with the Alec, right? And instead traded into a taunt, held on to the silence instead, maybe to deal with a bunch of feral spirits. But it turned out there were also situations where if you don't push that face damage, you might be like a couple points off of lethal the very next turn, and then it gets super scary. But in terms of the early game approach from Okashinsuke, I think it was very, very clever to just go for the Nazmani boards, even though he accepted it was very likely that the 5-10 and the 2-5 could get cleared, and they did. He did have an amazing follow-up of super cheap Skeletal Dragon into Psyche Split and the Malagos, and he just relied on the fact that back-to-back boards of that size would be near impossible for a Quest Shaman to deal with, and got hugely rewarded for it.
Well, to end things out potentially here, hopefully not for Bankyugi's sake, in Game 3, he's going over to the Ramp Druid. I think he's the only player we've seen who's gone with this specific build of Ramp Druid, like not the Kazakusan and not the Celestial Alignment version, instead just going with the good old, Strongman Yashaj variant, which is not without merit. You know, it does, I think, get online in the most powerful way the quickest, aside from maybe Glowfly. You could argue does that a little bit sooner if you get exactly Glowfly into Arbor Up. But the ramp just works so beautifully with this deck to get down Scenario War double Strongman, or early Umbral Owls, early Raid Boss Onyxia to turn up the pressure as well. And then, of course, has the get out of jail free card of Yogg-Saron potentially later on to bail you out of those miserable positions. But the downside is that it is also, I think, the most I don't know, exhaustible, I want to say, of the Druid decks right now. Like, if it doesn't hit those early minions at the start where you're playing down the strongmen, you have those cards to corrupt them as well. It does feel a little bit flimsy with the lack of strong card draw in the deck, leading to you to potentially the kind of hands that can ramp into not necessarily especially powerful hands.
Yeah, the card draw is definitely reliant on Guff more so than the other decks, but I wouldn't quite call it exhaustible in terms of overall threat count, because just the Yashiraj by itself can represent so much additional minions with the strongmen, and then you can pouch into additional Yashirajas or whatever 10-cost minion you might need by that point. Okashinsuke going for the Fell Demon Hunter. Of course, the glide is very, very important in the matchup, just to make sure that any draw that Bankyugi might have had in the early game gets shuffled back, gives him the hardest time possible to truly capitalize on that ramp. But if Bankyugi does get to the point where he has safely gone up to 10 and beyond mana, you can play Cenarian Wards, you can play Yashiraj. I don't really imagine Quest Demon Hunter gets there too consistently, because the armor counts are way beyond what the Expendable Performers combo can pull off.
That's true. Yeah, that's definitely where things get a little bit shakier for the Demon Hunter. Maybe more so relying on like doubling down on that lack of card draw. If after they've ramped and they've drawn a couple cards, you can glide them back down to 4 cards. Like, there aren't that many powerful threats they can play in the deck. It's like Raid Boss Onyxia, the Cenarian Wards, and then like maybe Yashaj if it's gone on late enough and they've already played the strongmen, but there's a good chance that Yashaj is just like a 10-10 that maybe deals 4 damage in the mid stages of the game. But either way, for Bankyugi, he's got himself the kind of start that you are looking for. Nature Study is into the wild growth. It's just that question mark afterwards that we are looking to fill in.
Yeah, he could go again with the studies to try and find wild growth to fill out the turn before the overgrowth. But the question is, how quickly can he find Guff? Like, this deck is just so centered on having a timely Guff, I feel, because exactly as you brought up, there's not that much card draw. Second overgrowth available?
Is there ever survival in this matchup? I guess that's maybe too greedy. I was just thinking that like Strongman and Cenarian Ward minions are clearable, but if they have survival of the fittest on them, they're just suddenly kind of not.
True. Interesting that he goes with the bloom instead, because currently the hand doesn't have much to bloom into. I obviously see the merits of going for second overgrowth, because this turn would still not be a possible overgrowth, but I was thinking Bankyugi could just go for Guess the Wait into coin growth into growth again, and that seemed pretty powerful. But maybe he's holding on to, or he took the bloom for flexibility instead. Termination, yep.
Yeah, we like that very much.
A bit of an awkward spot for Okashinsuke, where he by no means has guaranteed quest progression, but he can try to fish for draw spells. Spectral Sight, Sigil Runner. Alternatively, he could hold on to the studies until turn 4 for Glide, but he has 2 copies, so I feel like it'd be fine to use one maybe.
I think I'd rather just save them both to get 2 hits at Glide on the next turn, right? Because it would cost 2 if you've played them both. And given that your opponent kept a card, like, you don't know it's going to be Overgrowth next turn, but you kind of know it's going to be Overgrowth next turn. If not, it's like Bloom Guff or something like that, and then they still end up with a good amount of cards in hand. And so I really like this discipline from Okashinsuke to hold on to the Illidari studies.
Well, there's a new option.
Yeah.
Like, Therodon is just not answerable easily by the Druid. Like, the best thing they can do is to eat it while it's still in your hand with Mutinous. And if you give them 3/1/3 tokens, I don't believe there's a punish. No Shadow Step type effects. Alphian Trainer?
Honestly, I kind of want Skull just to like double down on having a good card post Glide, which I'm really hoping I get off the next.
Yeah. The thing is, like, do you just hedge around the outcome that you don't get a Glide in the near future? Because you can make the argument still that the Vilfian Trainer pressure is not too relevant, and it's somewhat counterintuitive if you are going for a Tempo Magtherodon, but I just feel like the Skull is too optimistic.
Fair enough. Okashinsuke agrees, doesn't even want to dig for the Glide on a second go, just would rather take the 2/1/1s. And now, Bankyugi, if he wants it, can go for a what? 1 in 3, 16/16 Mutinous copyable next turn. Oh
man, Caster Vision at its finest right here.
Boo. Your opponent made the eyesores, you have to play them Mutinous here. It's just common courtesy.
Misses on the Guess the Weight though, which is unfortunate indeed. Just gonna get rid of the 5/4 body and wait until he can find Solar Eclipse, I'd have to imagine, to go for the double Cenarian Wards.
Right, digging again. Let's get that Glide. Misses, but gets Spectral Sight, which is a decent way to progress the quest.
He's got the Viper tradable as well.
Yeah. Just throw down the Need for Greed, I think. Discount as much as possible.
I think so, since there's just no hint of a Glide in the near future. I think it's fine to fill up the hand a bit more, get himself resources, and closer to Demon Render Kurtrus, which would be playable on curve next turn if he hits it.
Like, if you trade one of these minions, sorry, you get to play a 2-mana Eldraki Warblades as your reward, I suppose, and you could then have Need for Greed back in your deck. But I just fully agree with you. I think the Glide plan has no signs of working out, so it's much more important to focus on your own plan and hope to hit a spell to go alongside the Magtherodon to clear it off.
Saves the Need for Greed in the end, though. Maybe he just says, this is the only way I'm completing quest stage 2. But he gets Kurtrus, which is a very big deal, kind of solves his problem of what to play for the next turn. However, it's time! 1 in 3!
Oh, no way!
I am sorry to anybody's ears I may have destroyed with that scream.
And to anyone's dogs who may have just been inexplicably summoned to the computer, but oh my god.
Yeah. How big are the bats? Are they anywhere close enough to getting rid of this?
I mean, from those couple of pixels, it
5/4?
looked like they were 5/4, which is
durable if you tank it as well.
Yeah,
They'll go up to 6/4s. You can hit for 3, and you can trade 1/1/1. The clear is there, but boy, does it hurt.
I grow impatient.
So you could actually hero power after, right? Because then you save 1 extra HP if you go for it that way.
But then they'll be 5/4s instead of 6/4s, right?
Right, but it still does it right because you'd be doing 6 in addition to the 10. because it still needs an attack, right, to kill it off. Because you could either you could have had 6 attack in addition to the 10 from the bats, or 5 attack plus the 12 from the bats.
Okay, but you'd trade the 1/1 as well, the other 1/1 as well. Yeah.
Yes, I guess so. Yeah.
Okay, got it. In the end, though, he
Maybe
doesn't
not.
even he doesn't even bother trading down the Mutinous. He just lets it stick, which I don't know about that, because how's he gonna deal with it without performers at least? Because he's already gotten his Magtheridon Eden. That's the best clear potential. And I mean, obviously he didn't know there'd be a germination, but now it looks like a complete disaster.
Yeah, I mean, he was hoping to just win the game next turn, I think, with like 0 mana Fellfire, Deadeye, and then he could hope to maybe get Bankyugi down to below the 16 health and then go like Arcanist Fell Barrage. It was maybe there. But as we can see here, there's just nothing to be done whatsoever. That's going to be game.
What a pan out. I mean, in terms of Mutinous's greatest eats in Hearthstone history, they have tended to be quest rewards, but those only go up to 7/7. Magtheridon is even bigger, and by eating Magtheridon, you also remove the easiest way of removing Mutinous itself. It's just so crazy how that pans out. But yeah, Bankyugi with the first win on the board, landed an amazing 1-3, and now has to take a win with his Quest Shaman and his Galvangar Warrior as well. Oh, sorry, Kazakhstan Warrior as well.
Yes. Yes, which is going to be a bit of an interesting one. We saw the Kazakhstan Warrior obviously struggle very heavily when we saw it on stream earlier this weekend for Trahezen, right? Who was unable to get a single win with it against all the combo decks. And, you know, the way I'm seeing the list built, it doesn't look like anything's going to be too different for Bankyugi. I guess against Okashinsky, his decks are a little bit less... or the decks that are left are a little bit less perfectly positioned to deal with this version of Warrior. If you can get down an early Kazakhstan, you might be able to outpace the Fell Demon Hunter. But again, as I've said a few times, I just think that Fell Demon Hunter, by playing efficiently, fitting in those hero powers, and getting an early an early Kurtrus online to reduce the rest of your deck, can just kill Warrior by going face every turn quite efficiently.
Yeah, that is a very real win condition indeed. It just kind of shocks me every time how much damage the weapon from Rokara can do. It's just 10, it's just 5 times 2, but for some reason it still doesn't register in my brain. However, Quest Shaman is going to be the queue first for Bankyugi, and he has, you know, the eternal debate of whether you want to keep Note Taker, and I am... Back in the day, at least, I was a very optimistic Quest Shaman player, so I would keep Note Taker. It just makes the hand a lot more fluid if you find either Guidance or Lightning Bloom. In this matchup, you do get punished, though, for going for Ultimate Greed with the Guidance, because Glide is a card, and on average, you're going to be getting much worse top decks if you shuffle back randomly generated cards into your deck. So Bankyugi very much hoping for Bloom here rather than Guidance, I believe, to go alongside the Note Taker.
Yep, very good point. It's interesting as to how he might choose to play out these first few turns as well. There you go, Bloom off the top, making this look much nicer. Because I think it's probably still just Quest and then you go for the Diligent Note Taker. But there's something to be said for like trying to fit in the Note Taker as soon as possible, especially if they hero power on turn 1, because then they're really going to want to play Quest on turn 2 plus another hero power. So Coin Note Taker is kind of hard to clear, I guess would be the argument to go for it a little sooner.
Yeah, but then you would copy your Quest unless you want to Bloom before playing Quest?
I guess so, yeah. I mean, I don't know, double Quest, 2 brew cans. Oh.
Sure, that's how that works. Anyway, he has gotten the Bloom Note Taker, but not the very last piece of the puzzle, which is one of the payoff overload cards. And by that, I mean Serpent Shrine, Canal Slogger, Feral Spirit, anything with significant board presence. He's gotten Novice Zappers, which are able to at least unlock the mana by completing the quest, but they're not particularly well statted against the removal from Demon Hunter. It's a bit more patient here.
Yeah, I agree with your point completely. I think especially with the Instructor Fireheart in hand, you're looking for something alternative to just loading up all in on minions right out the gate.
For Okashinsuke, I do like the Eldraki equip and not necessarily swing into anything. It's more just to work toward getting the Spectral Sight into outcast position.
Then it gets tough though, because it's obviously dependent on whether or not your opponent vomits a lot of cards. But again, I would be hesitant to play the double jump on turn 4. I'd be much more inclined to save it for turn 5 for that glide to try and deny them a lot of their card draw.
So it does have to be a lot of pre-planning for Okashinsuke here, because if he has the double jump earmarked for glide, then suddenly Spectral Sight is not a priority to get to the left at all, because you're never going to be able to outcast it if you're shuffling it back in the deck. However, I think for now, Okashinsuke is just trying to remain flexible because it's not a guarantee that you get the glide from the double jump at this point. Anyway, for Bankyugi, finally hits one of those payoff overload cards in the Feral Spirit. And now he doesn't have to commit the bloom necessarily this turn. He could just go Feral and leave the unlock from the quest progression for next turn.
Right. I mean, he could do though, right? He could go double quest completion on this turn if he wanted to with bloom. Oh no, sorry, it would be one-off. Apologies, with Bloom, Novice. So I guess just going for quest completed on this turn and save the Lightning Bloom for the Fireheart while still developing a lot of stats is a really nice way to go about it. It's a lot of pressure, definitely wants a clear, but isn't necessarily all in.
The committing of Zapper feels like maybe one more minion than I would have liked to see, but fair enough. It's not really getting better with this hand from Bankyugi. The Immolation Aura gonna make quick work of this alongside Fel Barrage. You'd have to assume he should swing into a 2-1 first, but never punished. Could have taken one extra, but it's all good.
Ooh.
Okay, multicaster is only gonna get... Yeah, true. So he's actually going Fireheart. Wow. Okay, Primordial is an amazing outcome.
That is amazing.
Alnos? Fairmount, my favorite card.
I mean, it's not bad here, to be fair, just to bloom it out, right?
Uh-huh. And it's not as though there's any good devolving targets outside of Magtheridon, I guess. Another charged call?
Damn.
Yes. Damn is right.
All right, I don't know what they got off that Fireheart, but I don't like it. Let's get rid of it.
Yep, there's the glide. But...
Wow.
Spectral instead. This is really optimistic because if you do not glide and outcast this turn, you're not gonna glide and outcast till after Jace, which is a very long time from now. And Quest Shaman, they like to keep their hand pretty slim unless they get like the note-taker guidance outcomes, and clearly the game has not panned out that type of way. Oftentimes they are just like playing their resources and generating them at a very solid and swift pace, playing off the top. So I'm not sure if Okashinsuke should have valued the hand disruption a little bit while he could have gotten it there. Yes, it is 4 cards for 4 cards, but at least on average you make the top decks worse because there is like a generated card going back in the deck.
Okay, well this gets us to complete, one away from completing Quest Stage 2, but ending up with a 6-cost minion to discover is fantastic. 6 cost a lot of the time just better than 7, and ending up with Onyx Mage Scribe, absolutely gorgeous, demanding a firm response from Okashinsuke. And I mean, hey, maybe Kurtrus is just such a response to pull this one back.
Right, that's a pretty clutch top deck for Okashinsuke here. It's very awkward that he has to trade both bats and they die to get rid of the Mage Scribe, but I'm not seeing any better options here. I don't think he can afford to glide in this position.
Agreed, yeah. I mean, again, if the glide wasn't stuck in a non-outcast position, I would hear the argument for letting the Onyx Mage Scribe survive and like taking value trades instead, and then just gliding the cards that are generated back to hand. But with it stuck in there, I fully agree it has to go.
I've heard of it.
Multicaster nicely charged up for Bankyugi. Doesn't have a Frost Spell, but that's all right. Lightning Bolt for 5 damage. Play Spirit Mount, it's great.
as demonstrated here.
I don't know why I've chosen this to be my agenda of all things. Just getting Spirit Mount to be liked by people. Okay.
I respect extreme passion about extremely unimportant things. The Doug school of thought applied to Hearthstone.
And nicely positioned by Bankyugi as well to be more resilient against the Guild Trader Fell Scream Blast.
I got it all.
So Okashinsuke is going to commit a hero power and then, well, self-glide and then probably hero power at the end, it looks like.
Yes, I agree. Okay, not a bad hand at all to end up with after all said and done. Can even clear, actually.
I think I'd prefer just to see Chaos Strike to get rid of the Zapper. I don't feel that the 3-1 is particularly threatening. But maybe Okashinsuke just wants to milk any additional damage he can get, save the Chaos Strike for the next turn, fair enough.
Yeah, okay, keep cycling, find something that does something. Sure. Clears off the screen, I suppose.
Find something that does something is a great slogan for how to play Quest Shaman.
and then do something.
Yep. That's both bolts committed now for Bankyugi. Reach quite neutered at this point. That's going to be a big relief for Okashinsuke, seeing both bolts before Brukan enters the equation. But he needs to start getting towards his own win condition, right? We're looking for Performer's combo and Magtheridon to go alongside that. But first and foremost is to finish his own quest.
Right, which can be completed and I think actually played on this turn. If you go double jump and hit glide, you could discount it with the studies and then just play Kurtrus at the end, which I think is fine. It's better in this order even because you don't want to outcast it here, I don't think.
Sure. Shuffle a Skull into the deck?
Yeah, it's close between Skull and Glide actually, isn't it? I guess Skull is probably slightly better.
That can get you even more flexibility with the Performer's combo. Like, say you have to play Magtheridon that turn as well to generate targets.
Yeah, I agree.
Although, actually, Skull completes quest now and allows him to go Immolation Aura. The problem is he doesn't get to play Kurtrus the same turn.
Really better to play Immo than go for Kurtrus? I don't know. I mean, I guess now that he's actually seen with the position he's in with the Expendables and the Fellfire, he doesn't actually even want to go for the Immolation Aura because he wants his opponent to have as much stuff on board as possible. But as I say that, I'm wrong again.
My guess is it's being saved for Brukanen to Feral Spirit, that type of thing. But even then, it's not enough without an additional Arcanist. I just feel like Immolation Aura is even less valuable than Fel Barrage once Bankyugi starts ramping up to this part of the game where he'll prioritize playing Charge Call more so than Feral Spirit, for example. Anyway, Okashinsuke is still perfectly comfortable. Kurtrus into Need for Greed. Clean.
I guess
a bit scary to leave 6 on board.
Right. If he was to draw... If he was to start Chaos Strike and hit Magtheridon, would that be lethal? Is it worth going for that? I think it might be just about, like, exact enough health on board to attack. Oh, no, maybe not quite. It would only be 10. Yeah, I think it might be just enough, but either way.
I think he would lack board space, right? Because you have to play Deadeye and Magtheridon, so you could...
True. Yeah, sorry, good point.
Any case, going for the Need for Greed now. Ooh, has Arcanist, Fell Scream, doesn't even have to worry about dying to some weird discovered card combination. Even then, I'd make the argument that Okashinsuke is relatively safe. No Brukan yet. He's seen Double Bolt. Zapper committed as well. I think both of them, right?
Yeah, both bolts gone. I think it's incredibly unlikely that he dies here no matter what.
And so for Bankyugi, the out becomes Charged Call. He does have Frostbite to somewhat intercept Okashinsuke's next turn. And I say that with a very strong somewhat, because this Fury is only going to cost 1 after that, right? Aim to progress.
Right, and then he can go Brucan Freeze? Yeah, okay.
Yep, Brucan Freeze, double cycle. He is stacking up the overload for the overdraft on the next turn, most likely.
Yeah, if he can just get himself a Bloom, like this could potentially, okay, be lethal next turn, right? Especially if he can find a point of spell damage.
Ooh.
But wow, he lets it rip right now. Just wants to get down the double charge call. Okay, let's go.
True. Raid Boss is a new one.
And
Scrapyard.
that's the big one.
Well, the taunt is huge because it generates another taunt, and Okashinsuke's maximum board space with the combo is for 13 rushing minions, right? But that's a 14 health taunt effectively. Oh wait, it still works with Immolation Aura. This is the lethal.
Aura.
Yeah.
But if Bankyugi hadn't cleared the frozen minion, he would have survived the turn, right? Maybe he would have still died to like Fury plus Chaos Strike, but I don't know if there would have been enough attacks to actually get through the Scrapyard Colossus. And so in the end for Bankyugi, that definitely felt like a bit of a slip up at the end of his turn.
I thought he would stop with the 7/7 and the wind chill, but he went in with the charge call, which, you know, you can make the argument that it's putting less of a timer on Okashinsuke because Bankyugi didn't have the guaranteed lethal in hand just yet. But with 4 cards left in deck for Okashinsuke, it feels very optimistic to hope you weren't dead to that.
Okashinsuke just needs to not mess up here. It looks like from his reaction, he's already done it. We're just seeing the catch up afterwards, as this should be plenty enough damage. Just needs to fit in the Immo, right, to get through the actual taunt, and then he should be really getting there.
Yeah, it's already 28 even without the Fury and Chaos Strike added in there because he had that 1 hero power slotted in at the beginning. This is doable even without skull discounts if you have the full 10 mana. But then the Chaos Strike and Immolation might not necessarily have been playable. So to a certain extent, the skull was also useful, but in the end, Okashinsuke gets the 3-0 sweep on Bankyugi's Quest Shaman, just not looking like it has the teeth it used to.
That's right, yeah, bit of a misstep it looks like from Bankyugi in the form of this Quest Shaman, unable to get the win against the slower combo decks. It's just the main reason why players don't seem to favor it anymore. In the Masters Tour, I could understand it more, I think, because people were expecting a lot of aggro. A lot of good players were bringing aggro themselves in the Masters Tour, and it was very unsure which way players would go so shortly after the mini set had just dropped. But I think after having seen that in action, it was a very, very risky play to make, to bet that Quest Shaman would be good because there'd be enough aggro to support it. And Bankyugi's read in this instance was not quite correct, and so the Quest Shaman ends up being his undoing. But on the other side, Okashinsuke, as you were talking about, he's just looking like a new man here. He's got a new haircut, the new look, the new plays, and for the most part, just seems to be very, very on point in his plays.
Yeah, that's right. Macro understanding always there. I think we can nitpick again, and we saw a bit of a micro error in the not attacking a 2-1 taunt rather than a 3-1, giving himself a chance to take extra damage. But it's really just small things like that. In terms of knowing when he needs to be high APM, for example, with the combo at the end there, I think he was very cognizant of the slip up yesterday on the Miracle Priest running out of time. Didn't want anything of the sort being repeated, and I think has absolutely redeemed himself from that. But he will face up against the unbothered one himself, Possessi, the world champion, tomorrow in the semifinals. While over on the other side of the bracket, we will see if Shaxi's next victim of 8 Trogs will be Lampy Series.
Yeah, that one is going to be very, very interesting to see. Lambi Series obviously has that Druid, but he's got himself the Demon Hunter that he can hope to get a win with. The Shaman, I think, should be in a good spot as well. And, I mean, who knows? Maybe the Demon Hunter just get banned away from Shaxi, and then it starts getting a little bit scarier. But for Possessi versus Okashinsuke, I hope we get to see that Priest in action for Possessi. I really want to see his Sethic Veil Weaver version, getting a good look at what it can do. But the real headlines here is that for Lambi, Shaxi, Possessi, and Okashinsuke, they're feeling good already. Semi-finals in the first of only 3 weeks of initial play before we head to the playoff puts them up with 3 points already, way above their head most of the field. Of most of the field. And